All right. Here we are, everybody. Episode 1 of Curtis Candy. Hey, so it was this is the first episode of the podcast. I was 3 words in before I mispronounced the word. I held out longer than I thought I would. Not Curtis Candy's Gooshtastic podcast. No idea why I titled it something that was going to be that difficult to spit out. Got a lot to cover. First things first, let's get introductions out of the way. We've got our regular crew here. Now, these podcasts are recorded as a live stream video at our Patreon, which is affectionately known as the Goosh. There's a reason for that. We'll get to all this. I promise you. I swear we'll get to that. We've got our regular crew here. Everybody that can be in from the Goosh is here in the comment section. They'll be contributing to the podcast throughout the night with the comments directly to me that I read as we go, as well as we have on these live streams an ask a question feature that allows people to post questions. And I encourage everybody in here with us, if you see a question you really like, give it a thumbs up, because as we go, I'll be checking in on those questions every so often. And the ones that have the most thumbs up will go to the top of the list and will get answered first as we go. We try and stay, unlike our typical live streams for anybody that's been with us through them, we try and stay more on topic here. But again, if there's something of importance that somebody feels they need to get to me, by all means, let it fly. It doesn't matter what it is. Why is it called Gooshtastic? Well, and why is the Patreon called the Goosh? Some time ago, while doing a live stream, our regular crew here, we also have a rather large YouTube channel called Spaz Boys Comedy. While we were doing a live stream at the YouTube channel, the gang was showing me different videos, recommending different videos for me to watch. And they suggested this one that is just a brief clip from not well known at all anime. The idea was they were showing it to me because it's vile, it's disgusting, it's brutal, and they wanted, obviously, to get a reaction from me. Now, some of the gang was new-ish to the channel at the time, and they didn't realize that vile, disgusting, brutal are all things that I find sometimes humorous, depending on the context with which it's presented. This context, animated in that anime, I thought it was hilarious. Within that clip, the character repeats the word goosh, goosh, goosh over and over. I am not going to give anyone the link to that video. If you want to find it, it does still exist on YouTube. I can tell you that YouTube goes out of their way to bury it. It's very difficult to find using any type of keywords. I bookmarked the direct link to it because, well, I have issues. So it is out there. That's why it's called the Goosh. To take this further, and exactly who am I? Again, my name is Curtis Candy. It's not my real name. Curtis Candy is actually the gimmick name I used most commonly and most famously in a very long professional wrestling career. And I grew very fond of that character. So I just kept the name in anything I do in entertainment. Basically, it's just kind of a schizophrenic thing, I guess. Split personality, however you want to describe it. But Curtis Candy is the name I use for adventures such as this. My real name is Rusty Williams, but Curtis Candy is how more of the world knows me. And, my parents are really proud that I never kept our own surname, but it is what it is. And again, as far as me, my likes, my interests, I am a 58-year-old anime nerd, because that's not sad at all. I mean, think about it. If you're almost 60 years old and you stand naked in your bedroom going Kamehameha and fully expect to send an energy blast through your wall, I think you'll agree that person is very, very cool. I have a wife, grown children. My youngest is in college now. For 25 years, my wife and I have been providing full-time care in our home for developmentally challenged people. The interesting part about that is when you provide that care once a year, the state sends a person in to check out the house and make sure that everything is up to code. More than one of those state inspectors has come in and thought that I am the person my wife provides care for. I mean, don't get me wrong, my house has mirrors, so I'm aware that that's not an unreasonable mistake to make, but it still sucks. I remember the one guy was like really adamant about it. He came into the house, and right when he came in, he immediately pointed to one of the smoke detectors, and he looked right at me and he goes, "Now, do you know what to do if that thing starts making a loud noise?" And I said, "Yeah, I know what I do if that thing starts making a loud noise. I say a whole bunch of swear words and I poke it with a broom till it shuts up." Apparently that wasn't the right answer, according to him. And I remember he continued, he was doing the whole tour around the house, and my wife and I were walking along with him, and we got to the kitchen, and once again he stops and he looks right at me and he says, "Now, this is the stove. We don't play around the stove." And I was like, "I know that. She tells me that all the time." And he says, "Very important. It's an electric stove, so if it's orange on top, don't touch." And I was like, "Okay." And he says, "I can't stress that enough. Orange on top, do not touch." And I was like, "All right." But as soon as he left, I touched it because he's not the boss of me. And when I touched it, I burned my hand really, really bad, but I don't care because I think I proved a point. In hindsight, I'm not really sure if I proved my point or his, but a point was clearly proven. So that's basically where I stand. That's basically what we got going on here with these podcasts. Got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. There's all kinds of crap going on. We'll cover everything in here. We'll cover a lot of politics, a lot of sports, a lot of pop culture, a lot of current events, anything that seems like something that would be of interest to all, we will be on top of. I'll always give you my honest thoughts on things. I don't put on a facade. Well, I just admitted not using my real name, but I'm going to tell you that I never put on a facade or a false front. Whatever you get from me will be the real deal, whether it be politically, sports, or anything else. Now, one of the first things I want to cover here today, most of you guys are aware of this Wuhan. It's going to be a tough day. Wuhan coronavirus. For any who aren't aware, it's in China right now. It's a virus that's taken hold of a decent selection of people, and a large communities, entire cities in China have been gripped by this. It's claimed a number of lives already. Last I had read, I believe it was 17, made a bunch more people sick. One of the things that I think is really important to discuss about the coronavirus is that this is, because you're going to get a lot of misinformation. As you follow this podcast, you'll find out that one of the great banes of my existence is the amount of bad information that's put out on social media and on the internet in general. And this is I guarantee you, and I can already show you proof of it. I will show you proof of it. This is already going to be a case of where scaring people is good for clicks. So be aware that the coronavirus in and of itself is not something new. This is an entirely different strain. This is important. I'll explain to you why. The coronavirus, well, here, I've got this, I've got it pulled up right here. Hold on. The coronavirus, and this is from the CDC's own website, talks about it. It's symptoms and diagnosis, basically runny nose, headache, cough, sore throat, fever, a general feeling of being unwell. The coronavirus, for the most part, is like having a bad cold. It's been around for some time. It has the symptoms of a cold, has the tendencies of a cold. You know, it's more commonly spread in the cold weather seasons. It says transmission, the air by coughing and sneezing, close personal contact, such as touching or shaking hands, touching an object or surface with the virus on it, then touching your mouth, nose, or eyes before washing your hands, and rarely fecal contamination. And we just had to throw that last one in there because gross. So what I'm saying is the coronavirus is not something new. this particular strand in. Why is that important? Because we're already seeing articles like this one I'm going to read to you from, I'm going to read clips to you from the Daily Mail. This came out today, as a matter of fact. The article is written today. 3-year-old California girl has been hospitalized for a month with a different strain of the deadly coronavirus that has killed 17 in China. Now, there is nothing inaccurate about what's stated in this article. However, it doesn't take a great leap to see what they're trying to accomplish. It's terrifying to people that this child has been hospitalized for a month, and it says with a different strain. But how many people, when reading that headline, gloss over that when you're talking about this type of a panic? So 3-year-old Alia Cardoza of Azusa, California, has been hospitalized for a month with an NL63 strain of the coronavirus. Basically, what this article is it's telling you about a little girl who has a known form of the coronavirus that we just talked about, but it's a headline article now because people are panicked about the coronavirus, even though it's an entirely different strain. We all know a cold can turn into any one of a number of serious issues, particularly for old people and young people. That's basically, from reading this article, what happened to this little girl. But the best way for them to get some extra clicks is to, and again, it's not quote unquote fake news. It's just not really a story. So what? So a little girl has been hospitalized with another strain of the coronavirus. The only reason the article is written is because they are looking for clicks related to this outbreak in China. Now, that's not to belittle anything with this strain in China. It is an issue. There are already a couple of instances where it's made its way to the U.S. I read of one in Texas and one of Oregon. One, I believe it was Oregon. I know the Texas one. I believe the other one was in Oregon. It was in the Pacific Northwest. And yes, people that were in China have come back with the virus. Of course, immediately they're quarantined. They do their due diligence to find everyone that came in contact with those people, make them aware, so they can make others that they've in turn come in contact with aware. They monitor them for symptoms. The same thing that's we assume with the news we get from China they're doing over there. They have last I saw, what is it, over 17 million people quarantined within their cities in China right now to try and stop the spread. So they are obviously taking the threat seriously. It's just unimaginable that you have entire cities quarantined off from the rest of the world because of this. So it's nothing. Yeah, I got to say it. It's nothing to sneeze at. I just couldn't resist. It's nothing to sneeze at. It could be very serious. The fortunate thing is it's been identified. Authorities are on top of it. My guess, strictly my guess, is somewhere in, well, many places in the world right now, I'm sure, are working fervently on trying to find a cure, trying to find a medicine that will knock out this virus. My guess is they will probably do that. Crone, one of our gang here, says it's a lie by omission, and yeah, kind of, Chrome. In fairness, in the title they did put different strain, but again, for me, my belief, the way that the article was titled, they made it conveniently easy to gloss that over. And the simple thing is, I don't see how it's newsworthy. It's not that strain, and it sounds like the child had complications from a typical coronavirus, which is a cold. Again, we know what that can do to old people, to young people. That's nothing new whatsoever. We're gonna take, now we've got a lot more things to talk about. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick question here. As I said, as we do these live streams, there is an ask a question button right here on my dashboard. I'm gonna hit it now, see what question has gotten the most thumbs up, and we will answer it. Let's see. Okay. The question is from Chrome, and it says, how bad, I swear to you, there are more people here than just Chrome. I promise you. How bad do you think the death figures and infection rate are that China is hiding? So far, the spread was tied to the rail system, so it's reaching well over 25 million quarantine. All right. That's a really, really good question, but there's no way to tell. Could the Chinese government be lying? Oh, absolutely. There's no oversight to them whatsoever. That it's not like they have a free media that could call them out. It's not like they even have. It's not like they even allow their citizenry easy access to social media that the rest of us enjoy, where they could get the word out saying, "Nah, it's much worse than what we think." That's a major concern, because if they are downplaying the numbers, we could be up against something entirely different. Is it a done deal that they're doing that? No. They could honestly be legitimate with the numbers, because there's not. My take on it is, simply by China acquiescing, admitting that this virus, there is an outbreak, I don't think there's a lot to be gained by downing the numbers an awful lot. If they were denying it altogether, it'd be a different thing. So I'm hopeful that what they're giving us for numbers are accurate. But it's a good question, Chrome, because can we prove it in any way? No, absolutely. There's no way to tell if those numbers are legitimate or not. Let's go to another question. Let's see. Oh, done answering. I should click that. Now, Alpha Centauri, another one of our regulars here, asks, what are your thoughts on how anti-vaxxers will take on the research being taken for a vaccine against the coronavirus? That's interesting. Will they rush to the nearest vaccination facility to keep from catching the virus, or will they swarm the nearest gates of the zombie survival outpost like World War Z? Too late, slowpoke. Hard to say exactly what the anti-vaxxers would say in this situation. For any of you who are not regulars here, I am very much not an anti-vaxxer, and I I am largely disgusted by the fact that the anti-vaxxers exist and have taken this stance on things, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's hard to say. As I mentioned, I think modern medicine, somewhere in the world, somebody will come up with something. This is just strictly my opinion. I think somebody will come up with something that will take care of this. We'll either prevent it, cure it, whatever the case may be. Would anti-vaxxers then be willing to jump? I don't know. It would my guess, knowing anti-vaxxers, they would probably have to refer back to Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth, to see what other people are telling them to think first. So someone else can break it down and see that maybe there is an ingredient in there that otherwise taken in large doses by a human can be harmful, which is what they base most of their anti-vax philosophies on. So my answer would be, Alpha, it's probably going to depend on what other slow wits on social media tell them to think. That would be my guess on it. Okay, now I'm gonna take on another topic here real quick, and we can talk about any of them throughout. So any questions you want to hit me with, send them my way. I also see today that the Doomsday Clock moved to 100 seconds until midnight. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Doomsday Clock is something maintained by a large number of academians, scholars, scientists. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was started as a countdown towards nuclear destruction. And of course, they're not, in fairness, they're not trying to say that they have enough information to tell you exactly when the nuclear holocaust was going to take place. What would happen is, as tensions would rise in the world, particularly during the Cold War, as tensions would rise, the clock would move closer to midnight, midnight being a major apocalyptic event. Now, the Doomsday Clock is still something that is maintained by these academicians. They are constantly giving their input on, now it's a lot of it is climate change. Anything that affects the world as we know it and can adversely affect the world as we know it is taken into consideration in where the Doomsday Clock is set. Now, the big question is, they're very learned people, very intelligent people. But really, how much better of a guest do they have than the rest of us? Because with all of that, there's human element involved as well. It's just like in the days of the Cold War and the potential for nuclear devastation, you can gauge how much tension there is, but there's no way to tell exactly how people are going to act or react. So it's more, to me, the Doomsday Clock. I don't want to come down on them and say that it's a terrible thing or anything along those lines, but I think it's more hyperbolic than anything else. And I do believe that in general, I think there is a definite political leaning to overall to the people who dictate the clock's settings. But the reason it was newsworthy is, I guess, prior to today, it had been set at 120 seconds to midnight, and now it moved 20 seconds ahead to 100 seconds to midnight, saying that, doggone it, you guys better start paying attention because the end is near. Do I put a lot of stock in it? No. Not, and again, I'm not trying to disparage anyone. Trust me, if I wanted to disparage someone, I would do so. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not disparaging them. I just don't think science can tell you. They can make their own conjectures. They can make their own very informed beliefs, but to tell you where the end of the world really is and how much closer it is today than it was yesterday, I don't really think anybody has that ability. Let's go to another question. The next one on the list. We're not going. Just so everybody knows, we're not. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I am a huge anime nerd, but we're not doing any anime questions in this one just because that's not among the topics today. And I should have mentioned that to everyone beforehand. Now, Brother E, and then of course these are screen names for those who listening to the podcast are like, these people have some really strange names. These are screen names that belong to our group here. And again, our Patreon, which is called the Goosh. If you want to be a member here, it is at the $5 level. You see everything, all the anime stuff. Plus, you get to be involved in all the streams and everything. It's $5 a month. I like to be right up front about that. And the link is patreon.com/spazboyscomedy. Now, Brother E says, how is your outlook for regulating journalism? Do you believe there should be laws in place where journalists need to follow a set of guidelines for their stories and not stretching the truth or twisting the stories to get more of a reaction? It's an interesting question because a lot of the group here knows that my education was in journalism. And as much as I have never been as disgusted with journalism as I am right now, and the way that journalism, I believe, is being corrupted. And it goes back to what we had talked about earlier, what Chrome had mentioned. There are so many articles that are lies by omission, and more so many articles that just intentionally try to wordplay with the truth to fit a certain narrative, and that just infuriates me. And then things along the lines of the New York Times, this again, because I believe in that whole journalistic integrity thing. The New York Times some months ago, if you'll remember, posted an opinion piece anonymously. They let the writer of the piece be anonymous. To me, that is a nuclear bomb into the midst of journalism. You don't recover from that, in my eyes. It's just not done. There's a reason. There's a very specific reason why that is never done, why it's never allowed. If you want to post an opinion piece in a newspaper, you would have to put your name to it. Because what does it mean without a name attached? When you can be incognito with your opinion, it's nothing but a glorified social media account that has a blank face and a bunch of numbers at the end of the screen name. It means nothing. But because the media is in direct conflict with the president of the United States, to me, it's just simply they're willing to throw out any journalistic integrity to try and get him. The article really didn't have any resonance. It was, at the time, again, you had the same people that are anti-Trump celebrating it, and it was one more thing that was going to lead to his downfall, and a couple days later, it was gone. So I have a great deal of disgust with modern journalism. However, I am not for regulations. I'm a huge free speech proponent. My one issue, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not in major media outlets. I think the whole fake news tag is largely inaccurate. I think there are too many mistakes made on all sides from journalists everywhere, because there is such a rush to get those clicks and such a rush to get the story out, that a lot of times that rush to be the first one to start collecting clicks is at the expense of getting all the details, which is again pretty shoddy journalism, but it still falls under the category of being a mistake. And much larger, it goes back to what I was just saying. It's slanted reporting. It's reporting where certain things are left out, certain things are propped up. And there's a lot of news sources now where the writer, the reporter, whoever it may be, fills the article or the piece, if it's on TV, with their own opinions and thoughts. And that's not journalism. Those are opinion pieces, and they're being fronted as journalism. So I'm not for regulating them. It's one of those cases where I like to see backlash against that type of journalism, but I think it has to come from the public. That is one of the few areas, or one of the few ways sometimes, that social media works to your advantage, when somebody can be called out that is obviously twisted the truth, twisted facts, whatever the case may be. But no, I'm not for any governmental interference in such things, unless it ever got to a point where, and I don't think this would ever happen, but if a major media outlet was repeatedly reporting and putting out stories that are just plainly false and just looking to create panic or whatever the case may be, you could almost start crossing that over into the going into a crowded movie theater and shouting fire when there is none. But outside of that, no, I would not support any regulation on them. Excuse me. And now I'm just going to take a look at some of the comments before we move on here. Hail to the Wolf King says, oh yeah, how the hell do you give an op-ed anonymously? That was some BS. I completely agree. It's just, I lost all respect for the publication at that point. It's just can't be done. It just never should be done. Now, we're gonna keep going on to all of our topics that we wanted to discuss today, and we can go back and revisit any of them in the questions, in the comments, anything like that. But I want to get all the information out there so you guys can have a moment to comment on whatever else we might be talking about. Also today, I see that Michelle Carter is getting out of prison early. Now, for those of you who don't know, just quick backstory: Michelle Carter, hold on, let me look at an article. I want to tell you guys exactly what her charge was, because I don't want to misquote that. Michelle Carter, she was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and it was for persuading her boyfriend to kill himself. I'm taking this information from fox43.com. I just like to throw out there wherever we get information from. She had a 15-month sentence that she started serving in February. She's getting out early due to good behavior. Apparently, while she was in the joint, she didn't try and talk anybody into killing themselves. But I want to talk about that concept a little bit, of doing prison time for encouraging someone to kill themselves. It's kind of, that's a tough spot. I mean, it's a shitty thing to do. There's no doubt about that. And the thing is, she talked, the article says, and the evidence came out, that it was her boyfriend she talked into killing himself. My first initial thought on that is, what a shitty girlfriend. That is not a quality, healthy relationship. I'm going to put that out there. All I can say is, going forward, any future relationships for Michelle Carter, if you're thinking of diving into that one, you might want to think that over really carefully, because that's a crappy girlfriend. And I will fight anybody who says otherwise to that. But she's serving a prison sentence because she encouraged her boyfriend to commit suicide. Now we're into the whole thing again. You could say, well, now we just talked about free speech and freedom of expression. But then again, there are always limits to that, where you're talking about the potential harm to others. Obviously, there was potential harm there. So it's one of those rare occasions, because I'm quite opinionated. This is a tough one for me. I think, again, it's a crappy thing to do, but I don't know that we should be sending people to prison for making suggestions such as that. Am I right? Am I wrong? I want to, and I'm going to look at now, rather than going to the question, I'm going to look at the live feed. I want to get people's opinion on that. Lyra Klein says she was not a keeper. Yes, I'll agree with that. She was not. Yeah, she was not the type you want to bring home to mom, particularly if mom has any suicidal thoughts as well, because she could wipe out an entire family. I think in a lot of cases, good behavior is BS, Chrome says. There's some cases where some are genuinely remorseful, but no one responsible for murder should get off with good behavior. The only reason I would disagree with that somewhat, Chrome, is I don't mind people having their sentences lightened due to good behavior, because given that that's a possibility, I think it makes things safer for the people that work inside the prisons. Again, I know it's a trade-off. Now you're allowing someone who did a crime and society said, well, this is what you need to serve to pay your restitution for that crime. You'll also hear, for those who are new, you'll hear trains in the background all the time here, because where I record, it's so close to the tracks, there's just no way to hammer them out. So fuck you, train is the common refrain around here. So, but because of that, I think that having prisoners that have a reason to try and behave themselves in the prison situation makes for a better situation for everybody that has to work within that prison, and those are some tough jobs. So now Chris says, I know nothing of her or the case, but it would depend on circumstance of what I'd personally think of it. Her boyfriend was troubled, and she knew that and took advantage of it. True. Yeah, she should go to jail. But there could have been other things at play, which I don't know. I can't think of a situation where I'd say, oh yeah, getting that guy to kill himself wasn't all that bad, but I'm not the smartest person. There could be a reason out there where it makes sense. No, I think that's a good take. And see, it's just so difficult for me. And again, as someone who's typically very opinionated, I don't know if I'm for that or not. I don't feel bad for her going to jail, but I don't know if I had gun to my head, not I was gonna say gun to my head. Not really, Michelle. I don't really have one. Don't try and talk me into it. It's a figure of speech here. Gun to my head. If I had to pick one or the other, I would say yes. Allow it to be prosecuted in extreme situations, which this seems to be, where I guess put it this way: if you're texting someone and they're saying, "Well, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to kill myself," and in response, you say, yeah, whatever. And then the conversation, no, I don't think you're liable for anything. But she took it a step further and almost challenged him to do it and kept pushing him in that direction. So I think, I guess as I think it through, if you are actively trying to push someone in that direction when it would have been just as easy to just leave the conversation, just block his texts, whatever you needed to do, just get away from it, then I guess I can, yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm coming around. Where someone is actively, forcefully trying to push someone towards a life-ending situation. Excuse me. Brother E says, people are allowed to speak whatever they want, even if it's in a case of bullying or pushing people to do self-harm. It's not on the persuader to be held accountable for the victim's actions. The victim needs to be mentally strong enough to take those critiques. Now, see, Brother E, again, for me, that was my initial thought on it. But the other side of that is, and as I think this through, I'm moving to that side more and more. I think that just like we have a responsibility not to come up to people that annoy us and stab them in the neck with a pen. I think we have a certain responsibility, or should, in a decent society, to not actively try and force someone into ending their own lives, or not even force, but try and encourage them to. Because again, the easy option is to walk away from it. Now, again, when I say that, I'm persuaded to say yes, that should be against the law. It's when somebody, and this woman did, just really keeps pushing it. Oh, you won't do it. You're scared. Blah blah blah. Why don't you do it? Stop talking about it. There's no reason to say any of that when the easiest thing in the world is to just walk away from it. So, I gotta stick with that. That's yeah. I gotta stick with that for my stance on it. Let's grab another question real quick. Let's see what's at the top. This one comes to us from Gigamac, and we gotta throw an old person dig in there. What what is the most significant outbreak you have lived through in your life besides the Black Plague? Well, kind of badums. I'm almost that old. And how does the, for the lack of a better term, rising action of the former outbreak relate to the current one? It's a good question, Gigamac. The most significant outbreak, that I've lived through in my life, there were outbreaks, and this is just off the top of my head, throughout the world during my life, but none that really major outbreaks that affected us. What was there was the Legionnaire's disease outbreak, of course, but didn't affect us here in the States. There's been a number of them. For a while, it was the killer bees. The killer bees were coming. I don't even remember where exactly, and I don't, and I think that qualifies as an outbreak. But there were these giant killer bees, and they were migrating from South America, I think, and that was going to be the end of humanity. It never materialized. I don't think there's been, at least Gigamac, that would have affected me directly. I don't think there's been a major outbreak along. Well, we had the swine flu, something like that. As far as the ones I've experienced, I mean, the biggest major outbreak, I guess, and to be fair, and I wasn't thinking this all the way through, would be AIDS, because that was an outbreak. Now, granted, there were very specific means, because it had to be blood to blood to transmit, of transmitting the disease, but that would be the biggest outbreak in my lifetime. How does this one stack up to that, to AIDS at this point? At least what we've seen so far, not even close. Of course, AIDS just did horrific destruction to life. I'm hoping that this one is not going to come anywhere near that. My hope is, and I do put a lot of faith in, we got some brilliant minds throughout the world that work in the medical fields. I really believe that they will come up with a cure. They will come up with a medicine that will take care of this disease. So I'm hoping, I'm very hopeful. And as a betting man, I would place a large wager on it that it will never come close to the death toll of AIDS. That would be the biggest outbreak of my lifetime. And I'm hoping that these numbers of those affected will pale in comparison to the outbreak of AIDS. We'll take one more. This is from Chris, or one more for right now. Going back, and there's the train again. Let's see. I lost it. Okay, here it is. Chris, going back to your point on the media creating articles for the sole reason of clicks, how do you feel about just how many people read what is written but give no thought as to why it was written or why certain words and phrases were used? Obviously, you'll never get everyone looking into things more, but for better or worse, I think people should. Absolutely, Chris, 100%. It would be nice if everybody read all information that's presented to them and really read it and picked through it with a fine-tooth comb. In fairness, do people have time for that in their day? Probably not. I do it because, again, it's something that is a cause of great infuriation for me when articles are written and I can tell that they're written to be clickbaity, or that they're written to facilitate a perspective rather than just to deliver the news or deliver on the headline. But it goes back to, it's just like the whole Russian interference in the election thing. We know that Russia was unable to actually change any votes. The Russian interference came in the form of these big social media farms convincing people to vote for a candidate based on false information. The thing that's frightening to me about that is so many people are hung up on that and the fact that Russia interfered with our election, but the only reason they were able to interfere is because our people were being stupid. There's no, why would, it just boggles my mind that someone would read something on any social media, and something as important as, you know, dictating how you're going to vote in an election, and not take a few seconds to search out other media sources. And you can say, well, we've just said that all the media isn't trustworthy. Right. But if you go to a huge cross section of different media outlets, you can get a really good feel for what's true and what is not. So if you're reading a Facebook post, a Twitter post, and you're basing your vote, basing your life choices on that without reaffirming it anywhere, you're just kind of dumb. That's just stupid. That's a really poor way to lead your life in the respect that it's probably not going to lead you to any of the results that you would like to see. So would it be great if people would read these things through and call out, and even if not call out, know for themselves that it's like, okay, I got to take this with a grain of salt because I can tell by the way it's written that there's an agenda here. That would be great. Will it happen? Probably not. Okay. Now let me see here. What else do we want to talk about today? Again, I want to get all these topics out there so you guys can continue on them. Oh, this was something that just came back to me today, and I'm gonna read you this article. This is on the lighter side, unless you're a swan. If you're a swan, this would be very serious business. This happened back, and I don't even know what, maybe you stumble upon it again. This happened back in May of 2018. The article I'm reading is from Deadspin, and it was covered in a lot of different places in the Orlando area. Florida man arrested for practicing karate by kicking swans in the head. Now, I don't mean to infuriate any animal rights activists or anything by my laughter, but just the simple concept of what possesses you at any level. I mean, to want to karate fight swans. I'd have some respect for you if the guy was like out in the woods and he was karate fighting bears. I'd say, damn, that's a badass motherfucker right there. Yeah, I'm with him. I might want to hang out with that guy because he seems like a party. But a swan? And well, and Chrome just wrote, swans are assholes. They'll kick that man in the head. But what gets me, and we will learn our way more around this new streaming service that I'm using right now. Unfortunately, I don't have a method for showing you guys pictures at the time, but I'm looking at this guy's picture. And again, if you want to find it, it's a Deadspin article. I'm sure if you Google search Deadspin, just the keywords karate kicking swans, you'll come up with the article. They got his crazed ass looking picture here, but the first thing that strikes me is he's got some damage to his lip. Looks like he took a shot to the lips, and his head is shaven. Has just got, just a little stubble, and he's all dinged up everywhere and marked up everywhere. Not only was this guy fighting the swans, he was losing. The swans were kicking his ass. I would be, if I was this guy, I would be more upset by the fact that I got my ass beat by a bunch of swans than I am by the fact that I got arrested and stuff, because there is no way you can make me believe he didn't clearly lose that fight. And the article says something about, he had the man's name is Rocco Joseph Mantella, and he had some experience fighting humans as he wrestled for Indiana University. I'll bet Indiana University is so proud to claim him. And he fought in an amateur MMA bout once. Didn't say if that bout was, well, it did say it was against a human, so it wasn't against the fowl. Okay. And it says almost made his pro debut in 2012. How do you almost make a pro debut in MMA? That part I don't understand. That just it's a little confusing to me. It's like, yeah, I got a fight tonight, and was he on the ramp down to the octagon? And he went, you know what? I can't beat Swans. And so he got the hell out of there. I believe somebody okay, Chrome posted and Chrome, you're getting a lot of airtime. Chrome has been a regular with us here at the Goosh and at the YouTube channel forever. She does a lot for us. The artwork you see all around all my different media outlets were done by her and everything. So, but she's got the article for those of you who are in the chat here. She just posted the link to the article. And Chris says, don't underestimate Swans. Not sure about your American Swans, but the Swans of Britain know they are better than us and act like it. Well put, Chris. Yeah. Swans are douchebags. When I was a kid growing up in Schenectady, New York, my cousin and I used to spend a lot of time up in Central Park up there. Now Schenectady has become an entirely different place, and the only way it would be safe to go through Central Park and Schenectady at night now is if you're a bullet, and even then, I probably wouldn't try it because you still might get taken down. But we used to go up there, and the geese were nasty, and they did have some swans there, and they were some crazy bastards, and they would come after you too. I mean, we were like, I don't know, 10, 11. We'd run like hell because they would whoop your ass. You know, then we got a little older and we'd bitch slap them when they come at us, and they kind of calm down, but they were mean. And Lachlan says, Chris, yeah, British Swans are dicks. So we do have, and this is one of the things I love so much about being able to do a podcast, a live stream, whatever, with the venues we have available to us nowadays, is because no matter what we talk about, the exchange of information is so immediate worldwide. You know, we've got people right here. If something comes up in England, we've got English people here. In Canada, we've got people. Do Canadians? That's one thing. Do we have any Canadians in here? Do you guys really have that split head like South Park said? I don't think so. I've never met a real Canadian because they frighten me. But I'm kind of kidding. Let's see. Here in France, we don't have swans. Lyra Klein says, here in France, we don't have swans. We behead them with the king. Well done. And I appreciate you folks in Europe being with us because you guys are, what, 5 hours ahead? So we got folks hanging in with us. It's got to be like 1:45 in the morning there and hanging in with us here to contribute. So I appreciate that. Now, let me, we had one. Now, this isn't to say that the stream is almost over, but we had one more topic that I wanted to cover, and then we'll have some more conversation about the entirety of all of them. Today, the Church of England came out with an official proclamation or decree or whatever it is they come out with, saying that sex is only for heterosexual people and after marriage. I got to say, I don't find that surprising that the Church of England would come out with that. Do I agree with it? No, not on a number of levels. My first thought, though, is how serious are they about? For those of you who don't know, again, I forget we have a whole new audience here with the podcast. I'm not a religious person. I'm an atheist. I will say this: all the people who are most important to me in my life, who I love the most, are very religious people, and I have nothing against religious people. And I should mention that I hope they're right and I'm wrong, but it's just not for me. So I'm not one of these atheists that annoy me as much as they do religious people and thinking that they're better than someone else because they think that, you know, they've ascended to this level of intelligence because they're atheists. Nothing like that. It's just my belief system is that we're just a really happy accident, as Bob Ross would say. But since I'm not a religious person, if this is the Church of England's official stance, and we obviously have some British folks in here, if this is the Church of England's official stance, what if you have sex outside of marriage? Are you not allowed in anymore? Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're going to be a stickler, if you're going to have rules and you want to be a stickler about them, and you're going to say anybody having sex outside of marriage isn't allowed in, your congregation nationwide should be about 12. And I'm going to say that over 50% of them are lying. So well, first of all, too, I also don't believe in, I think people should be allowed to have sex with whoever they want to have sex with. But that's not, it's not surprising that I run opposite of the Church of England in that belief. But I've never understood why is, and maybe somebody can give me a little background on this. Why is sex in and of itself, why is it seen as such a moral lightning rod. Feels good. If everybody involved, and I said everybody because I don't want to leave out those who like to involve more than 2 people. Myself, I generally am only involving one when I have sex, so I want to include everybody. What if everybody involved is having a good time? What the hell difference does it make? Married, unmarried? Does I wondered, and this I ask legitimately: does the Church of England believe that sexual intercourse should only take place for the purpose of repopulation, of conception? I don't know. The article didn't say that. That's my question. I'm not saying they said that. So if it feels good and you're having a good time, why does it matter if you're married or not? You don't have to be married first to go out and like have a milkshake and share the same straw. That's gross because, I am a heterosexual male, but even I am aware that girls have cooties. So, that's a gross thing, but it certainly shouldn't be against the rules. Let's see. Hail to the Wolf King says, think so. It's because the old church wouldn't let him divorce his wives. Gigamax says paying for sex-related things can take priority over paying the church. Hadn't thought about that. I've always that's a topic for another time, but I've always believed that prostitution should be legal anyway. It seems like a no-brainer to me. You're never going to stop it, so why not clean it up? I mean, let them pay taxes, give them 1099s, the whole nine. Obviously, Nevada's had that down pat for a number of years, but I've always believed that. Damn polygamous alpha says no such thing as having too many wives. Okay, now Chrome says also, Curtis, quick update. They forgot one group to add because they saw it as a common sense. Priests can diddle kids, ouch, on a Friday night. It's the only meat they're allowed that day. Oh. If you're appalled by the fact that I'm laughing at that, I've got nothing for you. I'm going to laugh at something like that every single time. Yeah. All right, we got a bunch of questions backing up. Hold on. Now we brought up all our topics. Let's get into some more questions now. Who's at the top of the list here? This is from Pierre Jones. He says, what's your take on the Prince Andrew interview over the whole Jeffrey Epstein case? # he didn't kill himself, LOL. I can't comment on that because I did not see it, to be honest with you, Pierre. I wish I had. And I will bring up as an aside to this, because you mentioned it, the whole, Epstein is a part of that. I am the least... I am someone who is not a conspiracy theorist at all. Do I think conspiracies exist? Yes. Do I think most classic conspiracy theories hold any water? No. Having said all that, I don't believe for a second that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself, simply because that's too many coincidences. Right from the get-go, when you have somebody in Epstein's position, as high profile a case as that is, and he's on suicide watch, and the course of events leads to where he could actually have the opportunity to hang himself with a bed sheet. That in and of itself, it just begins to stink too much to begin with. You had guards that weren't doing their rounds like they were supposed to. I believe we have cameras that supposedly failed or weren't turned on where they're... Come on. Again, as much as I'm not a conspiracy theorist, there's no conspiracy there. The guy didn't kill himself. Now, I'm not gonna... He had so many insanely powerful people involved. Man, the list of people that would have tried to get to him is just endless. Epstein, you were screwed from the get-go, bro. Well, that story that was ABC News just recently did about him, wasn't that held in the can for like 3 years? In the can, because supposedly the royals in England didn't want it to come out, and and again, allegedly they didn't want it to come out, so they are the ones who got it stifled. But I wish I'd have heard more of the Prince Andrew interview, Pierre, so I could have given you a better answer. Now, Chrome says here, he admits to going to quite a few dinner parties and spending several days together for their breakup after the public found out about Epstein's pedo stuff. Yeah, it's the interview where he keeps contradicting himself. See, I didn't see it, Lyric Klein. I've got to look that up. I'm sure it exists all over the place online. So I got to look that up. Interesting. Crim's got an interesting question here. For those of you who don't know, I had mentioned it earlier. I was a professional wrestler. I think I mentioned it earlier. Because I was a professional wrestler, I don't know if I mentioned it earlier because, I've been hit on the head with a lot of metal folding chairs that resulted in post-concussion syndrome. So, but I wrestled for over 25 years. And Chrome is relating back to what we were talking about as the worst outbreaks of my lifetime. And I had said AIDS. And her question is, was AIDS a big issue in the wrestling community? Yeah, especially, especially when everything first started coming out. And when we didn't even really understand exactly how it was transmitted and everything. And of course, in wrestling, it was very commonplace to gig, to bleed, to slice your own forehead open for dramatic effect. And yeah, you had a lot of guys who were understandably reticent to do that. I don't remember a time in the business where it ever stopped altogether. It may have at the upper level, like at the time it would have been the WWF. I don't remember for sure. They very well may have put a moratorium on blading, but I know in the indies it never stopped. But you were careful. You thought about it, and me doing the hardcore wrestling that I did, it was a commonplace thing. So typically, if I was blading, I only bladed with guys I was comfortable with working with anyway, and I had enough of a camaraderie and a brotherhood with them that I would trust them to not be lying to me about their, what their outside the ring life was like. So I continued to blade here and there as well. So was it a risk? Was it dumb? Probably. But I mean, and it's not like AIDS has been annihilated. It still exists now. So it's probably still not that good an idea to do. It's just that now people are so much more aware of it. Obviously, the level of contracting the disease has gone down. The numbers have gone down, have started to recess because people are aware of what precautions to take. So it was a big issue and I'm sure there were a lot of guys that weren't going to blade during that period, maybe never bladed again. But anytime you're exchanging blood, yeah, it was a big deal. Now our friend Lude asks, do you think the entire fear-mongering situation with the virus will die down soon or will escalate even further due to different factors? For any who are just joining, we're talking about the fear-mongering articles or fear-mongering posts you'll see about the outbreak in China, the Wuhan coronavirus. That's hard to say, Lude. If there's somebody out there that feels they can generate some clicks and get some attention by fear-mongering, they'll always, I think there's always somebody out there slimy enough to do it. I think its escalation will have a lot to do with the escalation of the disease itself. If it continues to infect more and more people, if, as was brought up earlier, if there becomes any indication that maybe China is holding back on the actual numbers of people infected, then yes, I think it'll make it even more rife with fear-mongering articles and fear-mongering posts and stuff. So I think it all depends on the course the disease takes, the actions, the course that those who would profit from it take. Brother E asks, do you think it was the right decision for the World Health Organization to back down from declaring the coronavirus outbreak a public health emergency, even though the virus had recently reached Washington this past week? That's a tough one for me because I don't have enough knowledge to make a good call on that. My initial instinct, Brother E, is no. I don't think at this point it was a mistake because I'm not sure. And plus, I also don't have the insider information. I don't know what might be in the works right now that you would hope the World Health Organization has. What might be in the works right now? Who knows? Maybe there are people at a certain level that are like, okay, contain this. We're on to something. Everybody's going to be okay. Just give us time. That's a possibility. But beyond that, where it's contained right now, it's horrifying and terrifying because you have however many, 17 million, maybe more people whose lives are inconvenienced in China because they're being quarantined. But I think for the World Health Organization to declare it a public health emergency, as scary as that is, I think it has to have spread more and have the potential to be spreading even more. But again, I don't think it would have been a wrong move for them to do it, but I think they're very careful about what they decry or what they decree as a public health emergency, just so when it's done, people will take it seriously. And I never clicked start answering. For those of you who are joining us or will be joining us into the live streams that create these podcasts, if you have a question that's been read in the podcast, you can go watch the replay at Crowdcast, at our page at Crowdcast, and you can see exactly where your question was answered in its timestamp. So just so you're aware if you want to take a look at those things. Chris says it'll die down once a bigger story comes. Well, that's the true nature of everything. Yeah, absolutely. And the unfortunate thing is it would die down if the bigger story is even seen as something as a breakup or a pregnancy in the Kardashian family, at least here in American media. That's the part that bothers me. Chrome says there's 4 people being monitored in Scotland. I know of at least a couple here in America too. So again, you hope that these people being monitored in Scotland worldwide. In America, you hope that they can contain that, and now everybody is aware, okay, this is where it's coming from. And you would think that as a world society, we're all aware that any travel to and from China has to be treated with the utmost care now. And that's the most you can hope for. And you would assume that's the case. And you hope that that means it's been caught in time to where it doesn't have to become a major international crisis before the scientists can figure out a way to deal with it. 3 in Edinburgh, 1 in Glasgow. See, yeah, because there's got to be, again, there's, people have business in China. People travel to China for myriad different reasons. There's going to be other parts of the world affected. Let me see now. This is Lachlan. He says, Curtis, do you think all the panic surrounding the coronavirus in the news will not end up as bad as is predicted to be like the swine flu? I think that potential is there. For those of you who don't remember, the swine flu was another outbreak, and for a while there was serious distress. And you didn't have the social media that we have nowadays, of course, too, to help move these things along. But there was a lot of panic about it, and it didn't amount to that much. I think a lot of this, it was brought up earlier, a lot of the reason it's difficult to say for sure, Lachlan, is because it's originating in China, where we never know for sure exactly what we're getting that is true or is not true coming out of China. So it's hard to say, but my gut instinct is, as I've been saying all along, I think the medical community will get on top of it, and I think it will be taken care of. So I'm hoping, and I also think that it won't be as big a deal as we fear, but I think we have to always approach it as, you got to look at it, you always have to approach these things in the lens of the worst possible scenario. So we've got to treat it like it's going to be a planet killer, even if it isn't, just to make sure that it's contained. Let's see. Chrome asks, on a lighter note, do you think the coronavirus will be the next awful disease after Ebola to be memed? There's already a waifu character for it. Oh my goodness, there's a waifu character for the corona. Do I think it will be memed? Yes, I think it will be memed. It will be memed repeatedly, and in some cases, it will be memed in a very entertaining and funny manner. Yes, I do think it will absolutely be memed. I don't think anything of any major concern or any major news anymore has an alternative other than to be memed. Okay. Smokey Loki, this is an interesting question. What initial steps do you think, this is from Smokey Loki, what initial steps do you think will need to be taken in order to reform the education system and teach kids valuable skills and information they can use in life? Excellent question, because Smokey Loki knows I'm a big believer in that the education system, as far as, throughout junior high school, should be geared more towards teaching kids about real world applications than some of the subjects that are certainly more specialized. I mean, if a child is going into a specific field, they should have access in high school to the studies they need to set themselves up in that field. But there are so many different subjects that are not required for everybody to have. There's a lot of things, we've said it all along. Even as much as it's great for kids to be exposed to the history of the world, I think most history classes, other than your basic history, I would rather have my child learning about how to conduct themselves in the real world and what they're going to face, specifically while you're in high school, about dealing with the aspect of going to college and how to make smart choices on where to go to school, what loans to take out, what exactly does a college loan mean, how to balance that risk reward, or how to balance that investment reward so that people don't end up in just horrific debt from going to school, because there are inexpensive ways to get an education, more expensive ways to get an education. Could steps be taken to make it more so? Absolutely. We all know what drove up the cost of college was, and it was well intended by the government, but they wanted to make it easy for everybody to be able to get loans to go to school, not realizing that, of course, on the other end, the colleges would say, wow, everybody can get money to go to college now. Let's jack up the prices. Everybody's getting a loan. Here's a loan for you. Here's a loan for you. And the schools just keep bringing the prices up. So there are things we can do to regulate it, the cost of college. But I think a lot of kids make really poor decisions. Again, as I've said in the past, whatever you want to work, but if you want to get a gender studies degree, you have to understand that the field in which you can work is very limited once you get out of school. Don't overpay for that degree. Although, if gender studies is going to be your degree, no matter what you pay for, it's probably going to be, you're going to overpay somewhat. Why not get your gender studies degree from an online college or something like that? Don't go to an Ivy League school and get a gender studies degree and then bitch because you have excessive debt. Yes, I would like to see the initial steps taken to eliminate some classes, or at least not make some classes in high school requisite, and instead replace them with that type of education. And I think we're going to call this the last question of the night. After I answer this question, we'll take a look at the comments over here, and then we'll say our goodbyes. This last one is also from Chrome. It says, any thoughts on Prince Harry and Meghan trying to leave the royal family while keep their mansion after having people's tax pay for its refurbishment? Personal opinion, fuck royalty, Chrome says. I got to preface this by saying, again, we first had our YouTube channel, we opened it, this one, Spaz Boys Comedy, in May of 2011. So we're coming right up on 9 years. We have always had a huge amount of support from the UK. And the entire region, a lot of support from Europe, but England, Ireland, Scotland, and specific have always supported us. So I've always gotten a lot of feedback from people in that region, and I've yet to talk to any of my English friends here that have positive things to say about the Royals. Pretty much what I get is, I can't believe my tax dollars go to support these these do nothing, fill in the blank, assholes, dirtbags, whatever they want to call them. So what I think about Harry and Meghan leaving, when I heard they were leaving the royal family, I was like, wow, finally somebody with a little bit of sense. But then there's always that extra added element, like what Chrome was talking about here. Well, that we're going to keep this mansion that the taxpayers paid for, and I'm glad it's one of those times that I'm glad I'm not British, because I'd be really pissed off. I'm not a big. I don't like the pomp and circumstance. To me, I want government to exist to take care of governmental issues. I don't need another layer of it, and I understand why. And I'm not poo-pooing England's history or anything like that. But if it were me, I just would not be comfortable with our tax dollars going to support the royals and the lineage and everything. I just wouldn't. It's not something that I think is in any way a necessity. I understand the pomp and circumstance, and people like the history of it, but not at that price tag for me. So what do I think of it? I think if they want to detach from the royal family, they should detach from the royal family and take up on their own. I don't think the taxpayer should be on the hook for any of that detachment. That's what I think. And let me look over here, see if there's anything else in the comments we have to cover. Let's see. Still trying to figure out how comments work. Jake the Gooshmeister says, we'll get it all figured out. I'm still working out some of the bumps in the road because this is a new form of live streaming for us too, as well here. It's very early returns we like it a lot. There's a lot of features here that are cool. I have to see if running it through my XSplit or OBS. Right now, one of the great things about doing these live streams, the one that we're doing right now, is it's instant, which is very unusual in live streaming. Typically, there's always a delay, but it's instant. As I say something, people are hearing it, and that comes in handy for things we have planned in the future with watch parties, things of that nature. I think when I move towards incorporating my software into it, I think that might bring the delay back. So it's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. If I bring the software in, I can offer more features. Like these articles I was talking about, I could show them on the screen for people in the live streams. Those of you listening to the podcast are like, I don't give a shit. I can't see it from here. But but for the people watching on the screen, there are a lot more bells and whistles. But we'll experiment with that as we go. The streams we do here at the Goosh outside of the podcast streams are where we'll start really experimenting. But the podcast, this is going to be pretty straightforward done this way. Itsunagi says, the monarchy has zero power. They are pointless and only benefit tourism in the modern era. That's true. I didn't think about the tourism effect, but right. I never really thought about that. But and what I would wonder there too, Itsunagi, is the tourism they create, is it for the people as much as the places? Because I know if it were me, if I got to come to England, I would love to visit England is because I would love to see the history and the structures. And wow, I mean, just because you guys' history is so much deeper and longer than ours here in America. I mean, we only go back to 1776. So I would love to visit England, but I want to see the structures, not the people inside the structures. So at least, and again, this is just from my perspective, it wouldn't affect my tourism dollars at all because I don't give a damn if anybody's living in there. I just want to see the building. Excuse me, guys. In case for those of you on the on the podcast hearing that clicking, it's just me grabbing a drink of water, and I buy the cheapest bottled water I can find because, well, I'm cheap. And it's these plastic that as soon as you touch it, it crunches and crinkles, and it's one of those ones that barely the bottle barely stands up because the plastic is so cheap. I would imagine plastic that cheap is probably somehow seeping into the water itself, and it's doing something to me. But at my age, it's like, what's it gonna do? Make my balls shrivel up or something? They're already doing it on their own. Who cares? Right from the spigot, Jake the Gooshmeister says. Loot says, if I want to see Buckingham Palace, I really don't give a damn if some old hag like can walk in front of it standing on the stairs. That's where I am, Wood. Yeah, I would love to see Buckingham Palace, and like you, I don't give a shit if anybody's there at all. It means nothing to me. All right, well, thank you guys so much for this. This has been a lot of fun. Now, the The podcast will get on a regular schedule. The podcast will be posted on a regular schedule. I don't have that schedule for you yet. I will let you know when it is. The recording of the podcasts, sometimes those times will be staggered here and there, only because, again, we have a worldwide audience. So this one started recording. I am in New York State. So it started recording at 7 p.m. Eastern time here. Of course, it's very late for everybody in the UK and other parts of the world. So we will do some other recordings at different times just to make it more accessible for more people. But for those of you who are with us at the Goosh, which again is our Patreon, it's patreon.com/spazboyscomedy. Those of you who are with us there, you'll always get a notification ahead of time so you can make a plan if you want to be in. But those will stagger. Those will be at different times. But once I've decided on a release date, there will be regular points of release for the podcast portion themselves. Those of you at the YouTube channel, you always get to see these videos shortly after we do the live stream. Guys, thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for listening to me. Love to get any feedback you can, anywhere you want to give it. Again, the YouTube channel is Spaz Boys Comedy. If you just search that in YouTube, you'll find us. The Patreon, where you can come to be a part of the streams, again, is patreon.com/spazboyscomedy. And the podcast will go up to all the regular podcasting sites. But to find us directly, we are on Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout is the one who puts the podcast out there for us. And again, unfortunately, there we can't do it by name, but it's buzzsprout.com/832-198. Hopefully they have a good enough. I haven't been with Buzzsprout long enough to know, but hopefully they have a good enough search engine. If you put Curtis Candy in it, you'll be able to find us there. Again, thank you all so much. We'll be podcasting a lot. A lot of them will go longer than this. We'll always be talking topics of the day. Always be doing it with some laughs, some appropriate laughs, some totally inappropriate laughs. But as always, I hope you have a great day until I get to see you again. The gang here, I'll be seeing you real soon. Those who listen on the podcast, stay tuned, and I'll get you guys by the next podcast. I will have a regular schedule of when these will be released. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you later.